Marabunta.
Hi and welcome back to the channel. According to old movies, the South American jungle was full of dangerous things. Watching Saturday afternoon movies, I was convinced that the countries south of the Panama Canal were full of Jivaro Indians who shrunk people's heads, booby-trapped ancient ruins, and Fernando Lamas with his shirt off. Wages of Fear and its remake Sorcerer didn't make things any better. Then in the 1980s, we got Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust. Werner Herzog dialed things up to 11 with Fitzcarraldo. In 2013, Eli Roth said "Hold My Beer" and brought us The Green Hell. 2019's Dora and the Lost City of Gold, which I liked, went some way to balance the racist tropes of the genre with more positive characters. But there's that lingering feeling that South America is full of ancient places that will flatline you before the third reel. But the two scariest things in Hollywood myths about South America are a myopic mad scientist and tiny little ants. Ernest Schroedersack's Dr. Cyclops was the first horror movie to be made in the 3-strip Technicolor process. There were previous horror movies made in Technicolor like Dr. X in 1932 and Mystery of the Wax Museum in 1933, but they used the older 2-strip Technicolor, a red-green system that didn't look quite right. Dr. Cyclops had the full spectrum of Technicolor, and it used the colours well right off the bat. The titles have a ghastly green radioactive glow that is really groovy. Dr. Thorkel, played by Albert Decker, is experimenting with a large radium mine he found in the South American jungles, as you would. Straight away we see that he's a baddie. First off, he's messing around with a lethal-looking glow stick, in a scene that was a clear influence on the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons of the 1940s. Secondly, he gets pissed off with his colleague Dr. Mendoza, played by Paul Fix, who wants him to use the radium to help heal cancers. Thorkel doesn't like this idea and he Chernobyls Dr. Mendoza's head and immediately sends away for a couple more doctors, Drs. Robinson and Bullfinch, who can help him with his research as his failing eyesight prevents him from using a microscope. The scientists arrive along with Robinson's slacker boyfriend mineralogist Bill Stockton and Steve, the guy who owns the mules they take on the expedition. It's Bill who gives Thorkel the information he needs to complete his research. Thorkel immediately goes, "Okay, thanks, bye," and asks them to leave. Not suspicious at all. The travellers camp overnight in his compound and discover the pitch blende and radium, which pisses him off again. He lures them into a chamber where he shrinks them down to the size of Barbie dolls to test his scientific theories. Unlike all the previous experimental subjects, the humans don't die and begin their fight to survive Thorkel. During the process, they break one lens of his spectacles, making him, from their viewpoint, a giant Cyclops. For 1940, this movie really works. The special effects are great. Forced perspective, matte paintings and rear projection are all used well, and the giant sets really sell the idea. Albert Decker as Thorkel is creepy and monomaniacal. He lifts the clunky dialogue way above where it should be, and makes the scientist a really menacing and murderous bastard. Now, Albert Decker was a fine stage and film actor, though in his later years he seemed to lose the plot. For those interested in the macabre, you can look into the way he died. It's kind of different. The supporting cast is okay, but the characters are a bit underwritten and there are a couple of plot threads that don't really land. The director, Ernest Schroedersack, also directed a bunch of other movies, including the original version of King Kong. This was his third last movie, after which he made Mighty Joe Young in 1949, and directed part of This Is Cinerama in 1952. Dr. Cyclops has had a Blu-ray release, so you might want to check that out and put it on your shelf. Before I get on to the second movie, here's the bit where I ask you to like the video if you do, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, and give the channel a little bit of support. You can also do that at patreon.com/paleocinema and donate a little money towards the channel. For a movie that's supposed to be about an invasion of soldier ants onto a coffee plantation, this one's structured a little bit unusually. Directed by Byron Haskin, The Naked Jungle has 2 of the 3 acts play as a romantic melodrama. Christopher Leningen, played by Charlton Heston in tight jaw mode, sends away from mail order bride and lucks out by getting Eleanor Parker's Joanna, a strong, intelligent woman. The tension arises when he finds out that she's a widow, and he, having lived in the jungle since his youth, has never been with a woman. Sexual politics are kind of interesting here, and there's a strong chemistry between Heston and Parker, which makes it work. And the romantic plot beats of this one are pretty much the same ones we've seen since the Bronte sisters. But the script by blacklisted writer Ben Maddow, based on Carl Stevenson's original story, is better written than most of the scripts in this genre at the time. There's also a secret source to this movie, which is the District Commissioner, played by William Conrad, who steals the film.
Marabunta.
He gets all of the best lines, including the one where he tells Leningen that an unstoppable mass of soldier ants is on the way.
What is it?
Marabunta. Soldier ants. Billions and billions of them on the march.
Conrad started out as a radio actor, so he had a way of really hammering home the dialogue. And in the 1970s, he became very successful as Frank Cannon in the Quinn Martin TV cop series Cannon. When the Marabunta are discovered and attack Leningen's plantation, the pace picks up. The Naked Jungle then becomes one of the coolest adventure movies of the 1950s. It's got those perennial themes about man versus nature, and for me at least, it's got an additional theme which I really appreciated, which is the idea of someone risking their life to save my morning cup of coffee.
Morning brown, get yourself a cup of morning brown.
But I also have to give props to Eleanor Parker, who was a much better actor than she was ever given credit for. She did get an Academy Award nomination, of course, for Cage in the early 1950s, but as her career moved on and she aged, the roles that were offered to her were way below her talents. I like her in this movie, I like her in a number of movies. She was in Eye of the Cat in 1968, and was also in a movie I talked about in another video, The Oscar, that wonderfully bad Stephen Boyd movie. She was very often much better than the movies she appeared in. The Naked Jungle just works. The special effects are professional enough to carry the story, and they don't kind of jar to a modern sensibility. And this is one of those movies that if you saw it as a kid, you're going to love it forever. There's an addiction that you get early in your life to certain films, and sometimes it can be a positive thing, sometimes it can be a negative thing, but it's always there, and it's something that we've got to really appreciate and acknowledge that yes, sometimes the films aren't as good as we remember them being, but they're still part of our history and part of our progress as movie viewers.
Leningen, you're up against a monster 20 miles long and 2 miles wide, 40 square miles of agonizing death. You can't stop it.
So anyway, that's all for this time around. Thank you very much for watching. These two movies were such fun to revisit. As always, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some ant and mad scientist movies, and I'll catch you next time. Good morning all. You're probably hearing a lot of ocean sound in the background because I am in, and I will lift up the camera, Port Campbell in Western Victoria, just for a little bit of a day trip. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about movies, so don't worry about that stuff. But yeah, it's early, it's a little bit cold, but it's a lovely place to be, and I'm looking for some coffee before I travel on. A few things about movies. Just going to ramble a little bit about movies this time and just see how it goes. Has it ever occurred to anybody that Brigadoon, the classic 1955 MGM musical, is actually a reverse horror film? Just think about it. Two guys wander into a town where people are weird and have weird habits and have weird folkways and say that they're from the past. And everything goes well. You know, one of them falls in love, they dance around, they have a great time. And it's exactly the opposite of The Hills Have Eyes and horror movies like that, where people wander into a place, the people are strange, the people have weird folkways, and they kill them. So Brigadoon has to be the only, there are probably others, but it's the only one I can think of which is a reverse horror movie. And now we're getting some birds coming in because it's now 7:35 in the morning and it's winter, well, close enough to winter. I'll give you a bit of a view about Port Campbell because it's pretty friggin' lovely. So here I am at the waterfront, just kind of looking around. Let me just do a bit of a zoom. It's one of the few ports on the southwest coast of Victoria, along with places like Warrnambool and Port Fairy. Yeah, you can make the jokes about Port Fairy, but Port Campbell's lovely. It's really interesting. You can see the breakwater way out there. There's a reef right out there somewhere where the waves are already breaking. It's a nice morning. I may stop for morning tea a little bit later and and just kind of cruise around. By the way, thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. The channel is going really nicely. I'm getting a lot of people who like science fiction movies, which is kind of cool, but I wanted the channel to be more than just science fiction movies. I think that there's a limited space for just science fiction movies to be talked of on the channel. I want to talk about classic films, I want to talk about new films, I want to talk about, I'm doing one in the future about mermaid movies and the history of mermaid movies, amongst other things. So there's lots of fun stuff that can be said in a wider context about cinema, and I have done it with the podcast since about 2007, but I really want to do it with the channel as well and kind of let people know about a whole bunch of weird and wonderful movies that just aren't getting a lot of love while all the new stuff crams everybody's attention. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break now, and when I get back I'm going to be somewhere else and I'll talk about some more movie stuff.